to my ears. Yes, so I always wanted them to keep their flows, and then after those rounds and something like that, I'd be going, let me see your flow. No, let me see your flow. And I'd look at it and I'd be, what is this? Right? Come on, what? You know, and working through what those arguments were, and you know, trying to really get to the guts of the argument that they're actually making. And like I said, always make them rework their speeches, make them redo their speeches from it. And essentially what happens is this, right? They'll go back through on their rebuttal, right, and they're going to restructure it perfectly. Like, I want you to give the perfect rebuttal. So go back through, write all the arguments you wish you would have made, or the evidence that you wish you would have read, all that, make it perfect, and then come in and do it for me. And of course, you know, like I said, you know, depending on how much time you have to be able to do it, you know, the more you can get them to do rebuttal reworks, the faster their growth is, because that's the real skill in debate, is being able to capture.
I'm missing some teachers here. Can I grab them? I don't know why they're not here.
You can grab them. This is the group that was here from the beginning.
Yeah, there was a lot of people not here.
Yeah.
The teachers that need to be here are not here, so I have to go grab them. Can I grab them very quickly?
You can, yeah.
Very important. I need them to be a part of this.
You know.
Who's talking is very important.
You can tell jokes now and watch you.
Actually, I'm gonna keep going, because God knows how long it'll take her to find them, and you know, the fact that they're not here goes into the category of not being my problem. I think there's a competitive advantage of being here. So, quick refresher. If I'm a negative team and I'm running a disadvantage with generic links, what argument do I want to use to beef that up?
Okay.
No, don't worry, I have two. My band did a gig last night in Key Largo until 2:30 in the morning, so I spent the night down there. No problem.
Yes.
I am negative.
Negative.
I am running a disadvantage, and I have a generic link on my disadvantage.
Your goal is to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You go.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
keep sure I'm following.
Yep.
So I know you have to make a link to the affirmative plan,
Yep.
and the link has to be to a broad level.
Well, the only link I have is a broad one,
Okay.
but I gotta prove that my broad link links to their specific plan. What argument do I want to run with my disadvantage to help me win that disadvantage? Go ahead.
So, from what my understanding is, since with the topicality, since you're running on a generic idea, so you need to make sure that the affirmative answer is they come up with a very generic definition. So you're trying to prove to the judge, okay, our definition is generic and it applies to anything. When they do that, you're like, since your definition applies to anything, now we can use a very generic link to link to your account, because you just said everything's generic, so we're gonna have our generic link that will link to your account and find that yeah.
So what I want to do is that's exactly right. I want to run topicality.
Oh, that's what I'm missing. Sorry.
Right? Yeah.
Topicality
The argument is topicality,
Yeah.
right? So I want my kids to run topicality with a precise definition standard, or something, a limiting definition standard, right? I want to limit the size of the resolution. As the negative, I want to say limit the size of the resolution. Now, the only reason I want to say limit it is to get the affirmative team to say what?
That they have,
Broad is better,
broad
right?
is better.
The affirmative answers back with broad, and then I go, great, you are absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. Broad is wonderful. Now look at my broad link disad.
So this, can you say that again?
Sure, absolutely.
The disadvantage and the negative?
Right, as a negative team, I'm running a disadvantage, right? And my disadvantage needs to link to the affirmative team's plan. It needs to say, when you reduce surveillance, this type of surveillance, it will cause something bad to happen, right? But my link evidence, the evidence I have on my link, just says, generally reducing surveillance will negatively impact the economy, right? That's the generic link. It's not specific as saying the affirmative's plan, the affirmative's specific reduction in surveillance will cause impact on the economy. And so what I want to do as the negative is I want to run topicality, and I'm going to use a narrow interpretation of the resolution, which is just a fish hook, right? I'm fishing, right? I'm just putting it out there as bait. That's all I'm doing, right? I don't have any intention of winning a narrow interpretation of the resolution. I actually don't want that. I want the affirmative to say I need a generic, broad interpretations of the resolution are better. And then I can concede broad interpretations and say, you're absolutely right. We use a broad interpretation of the resolution, and the broad interpretation means that the generic links I have to my disadvantage now link to your plan. I know it's crazy, but
With the topicality against negative, which is one of my favorite arguments. With it, I think we were looking at my kids were looking at the resolution, and I was looking at the topicality argument that they have given it. But that's not the one I came up with. So my only thing is with the affirmative, they already have to come. What you tell them just to come prepared. I'm telling my kids to come prepared with a topicality argument for every word that is in the resolution. Because to me, every word is fair game.
Absolutely.
But it's the strongest word that, again, you have more evidence to. Because remember, when you're looking at the definition of the word, there are several definitions to use it. Now, I was going back to the argument. I was going to ask you this. So, you know when you're saying, okay, so what can the affirmative say to topicality? My argument is that if you bring up topicality, I think this is the operational definition. So how I thought about it, I thought you were going to say was you're going to say instead, no, in reference to the argument that we're talking about, the topic, in reference to the subject that we're saying, that definition does not fit. Because if it fit, and I told them you need to find evidence that shows, okay, we're talking about politics. In politics, there's evidence that everyone who's an expert uses the definition. Why? Because that's the agreed upon definition within the scope of that topic. So you bringing this definition does not apply to us because that's the scope of it.
And that's a great lead-in to kind of the next piece I want to talk about, which is what are the standards for topicality?
Okay.
Right? A topicality argument is divided into three parts. The A subpoint is standards. And the standards are, how do I evaluate the definition? Right? What criteria should the judge use to evaluate the definition or the interpretation? Right? What you are just talking about as an example is best definition as a standard. Right? With something like field contextual definitions are best. Right? Both of which are examples of that type of standard. Right? Examples, and I'm going to give you a list of standards that can be used. You usually only use one or two. Okay? You're not using all of these. There's a whole world of possible standards that you could use. You're picking one or two of these, even though I'm going to give you a longer list. Right? So the ones that are best definition is very, very common, right, as a standard. Right? And usually it's going to be coupled with something like field context, that field contextual definitions are superior, experts in the field. You know, examples of that would be people using Black's Law Dictionary, right, and arguing that that's a superior definitional source because it's from the legal field, right? Now, there's a whole set of arguments against that, saying that every single definition in Black's Law Dictionary is specific to a particular legal case. So to say that a definition from one particular legal case is the best definition, a little crazy, right? But it goes both ways. I mean, that's the beauty of debate, right? For every argument, there's an answer. Yeah, that's it. It's just the nature of it. So best definition is one that is very, very common. Second one, limiting definitions. And sorry, I use a lot of debate abbreviations. If something you see on the board, when I get into debate mode, I sometimes just use them and don't think about it. So if I write some kind of symbol that you go, hey, what the heck is that? Dale, what is that? Just ask. I sometimes forget.
Yeah, since you mentioned that, because now as you're talking, I'm hearing words like topicality and other things that I don't necessarily use when I'm speaking to the students.
Sure.
So is it something that I should probably start doing now?
Yes.
Introducing the
Absolutely.
other words pertaining to policy debate?
Yep. Yeah. And that's the biggest reason why we're doing this is, I'm going to try to today give you, this much depth on the totality of it and kind of give you exposure to a lot of this vocabulary and language and kind of concepts behind debate. And then in subsequent meetings, we'll really go into the real theory, real disadvantage theory, real counterplan theory, real, the real nuts and bolts of all of it. This is just to kind of give everybody an exposure.
A resource for any of you is the Atlanta National Policy Debate Manual. If you type it up, it is an amazing resource. When I was in debate, my student found it when she was trying to look up something I said, and it's amazing because there's one learning to debate that we have on our website, the UDL. It's cool, but it has a lot of reading. Our students, they transfer information or process information differently. The one from Atlanta, it actually has pictures and little memes. It's funny, I think it's hilarious. But it has little things that will catch them and make it make sense. And it breaks it down a little bit more for them. So it's the Atlanta, if you look up Atlanta National Policy Debate Manual, it's a really, really good one. It's long, so I mean, I would say make sure, make sure to print it 72 pages. But it goes through every part that he's talking about. Not in depth like he's doing, like we're talking about the theories, but I think it's more than I think sometimes the students are being exposed to. So I think that's a really, really
sounds like a great resource. And Atlanta's a hotbed of policy debate.
Yep, they are.
That was probably put together by Melissa Wade and her group. Melissa Wade was the coach at Emory for a long time, very dear friend of mine. She's one of the very founders of the Urban Debate League. I mean, back when I was debating still, is when none of the Urban Debate Leagues had been formed. And a lot of us wanted to create this, to kind of have urban debate. And, so it's pretty cool that we're finally at the point where we have it here in Miami. It took too long to do. We talked about this one already. Broad is best. Right? Broad interpretations are best. And of course, the reason why broad interpretations, and remember, all meta debate or debate about debate theory is debate about the activity itself, right? So what I'm trying to do is explain why this particular type of interpretation is better for debate, improves education, improves, debate as an activity.
Have you seen a lot of teams well? Because I never used the broad as the best one. I don't know if I particularly like it. What do you think about that standard, number 3? Do you think it's a strong one? Because I feel like all of them, I don't think that's the strongest one.
Well, it all depends. It all depends upon strategically what I'm trying to do with it, right? I mean, my favorite is what I described before, which is use topicality to get me a link on the substantive debate. But, at the same time,
I guess it depends on how the affirmative is introduced in a case.
There's where you'll find broad is best, and there's an argument called hasty generalization and whole resolution, and those two arguments basically say that it's the affirmative's burden to defend the entirety of the resolution, not just their plan, right? And those require a broad is best standard because you're arguing that the affirmative has to be broad. And so you're, with that strategy, rather than me trying to trick the affirmative into being broad, it's me saying, you gotta be broad, right? It's maybe a little more direct, you know, right? I'm talking about what I like, because I love to be able to concede the affirmative's argument to get my negative argument, right? I think that's the most powerful thing I can do, but a lot of times, all I've got is a bunch of generic disads, and I might just say, you know what, instead of trying to fish hook them into giving it to me, or I think they're kind of a smart team and they're not gonna fall for it, then I may just out the gate run something like a whole res, a hasty G, or just a regular T with a broad is best, and, you know, and just defend that interpretation.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense, okay.
Yeah, like I said, it all depends upon the particular concept. Now, precision, you know, obviously you'll see precision and limiting often get used, or they're used interchangeably. Not a whole lot of difference between them. Sometimes you'll see somebody say, you know, for example, I could run two standards. I could say best definition with like a field context standard, and then use precision. That those are more precise, right? So I could do that, but obviously I would never want to run precision and broad is best, right? They contradict themselves right out the gate,
Exactly, yeah.
right? That would be a bad block to put together.
So if you're an app and you're running an operational definition, and the other team feels like you're kind of trying to trick them, so they can run a hasty generalization,
Sure.
they can break out of
Yep.
and force you
Right.
to generalize.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. The B subpoint is going to be the violation. And the violation is the specific argument why they are not topical, right? What word in the resolution they are violating, okay? The first component of that is going to be the definition itself, right? I have to advance some kind of a definition. Sorry, and I apologize. One other one that is actually pretty common, no pun intended, is common person as a standard. And this is for things like Webster's dictionary. You know, somebody's going to run Webster's or something like that, and they'll make